Progress.
Anthony, how are you? Hey, good, how are you? Good. Happy New Year. Margaret?
Do you have an extra agenda?
This forward one? Yeah. Do we know if Colette or Taylor are going to go online?
I heard from Taylor, I heard from Colette, and she is on there. Oh, okay.
Thanks.
Taylor is
She said she would go in person.
No.
She is. Hi, Taylor. Just gotta see Taylor. Oh, you got it. Oh, it's like live on the line.
There's
Full packet, yeah. And I'll be screen sharing some of this.
Remind me here, do we need to take a vote till I collect this? Has Neil tweeted that we haven't started yet? So given an opportunity, I'll go ahead and call us to order. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Central Virginia Regional Housing Partnership Executive Committee, January 25th, 2023 meeting. And Mr. Smith is just running a few minutes behind, so he will be joining this party. And we do have Colette online. We will need to take a action to allow her to participate online. So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Very good. Colette, you are allowed to participate electronically now. Meaning you can actually take votes and such if we need to do so today.
Thank you. It's a little hard to hear you guys though.
Oh, speak up.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
All right, let me drink some more coffee. All right, comments from the public. Do we have anyone, we don't see anybody in the room. Anyone online wish to give comments from the public today? I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand, so we'll close comments from the public, move to the consent agenda. And on the consent agenda, we do have our November 30 draft minutes. Any changes, additions, edits to that from anyone? And then the monthly financial update, and any notes there that we need to point out?
So, are we get the budget update?
Yeah, I can just add that through the TJPDC's budget process, an amended FY23 draft budget will go before the commission in their February meeting, and then again in their March meeting for approval, and that will then have an amended budget for the RHP based on the contributions that we received from the members of the partnership, as well as any contributions or donations for the summit. So there will be an amended budget coming, but we keep this one as well as through the commission process.
Great. And with that, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. Second. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Consent agenda is passed. All right, we're going to move along to our project updates. The first, number 4, updated bylaws. I believe that was in the packet, what the changes were. Oh, yeah, that might help with the online hearing as well. And you're gonna walk us through the changes or the suggested language?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, you all might remember, we had our bylaws work session in November, and so I took notes, borrowed some other notes, and then reviewed the video, and these were sort of the major changes. So, on the packet, in color, you'll see that the new changes are in red, and there's a sheet that sort of summarizes some of the major changes, but I'll just go through them individually. I know that Christine had a point of clarification on the electronic participation one, which we might want to adjust accordingly, but I remember the first change is Article 4, Section 5, where you all talked about executive committee members serving 2-year terms rather than annual terms. As well as, in addition to the next section, indicating that every 2 years, the full partnership will examine the executive committee to determine if new appointments are necessary. And if that is the case, then no more of half of the executive committee shall be changed at one time to retain a little bit of continuity. Chrissy, do you want to talk about Section 14, the remote policy?
Yes, my recommendation for section 14 was to remove the majority of that paragraph and any detail related to the code, and just reference that the housing partnership will utilize the PDC's approved electronic meetings, so that if there are changes that occur in the regulation over time, we don't have to go amend the bylaws. And then I also recommended, Ian, that we then say attached as exhibit, whatever, so everybody has a copy of that policy.
So swap what's in there currently with.
With just the sentence that the partnership as an advisory body of the TJPDC will follow the commission's approved policies. And then I also recommended him keep the last sentence that says in the January meeting, dates will be identified in advance for any all virtual meetings.
So it's established, or it's accomplishing the same thing, which is
It is.
complying with the TJPDC's electronic participation policy, but yeah, we don't want to have code in there that might change. I totally agree.
And then that also applies to Article 10, number 3, but I think that one can stay as is because it cites the umbrella code. So it just says Freedom of Information Act and Open Meetings laws, but it doesn't go into any details. So if that changes over time, it still references the right code.
Great. Let's see, Article 5, the officer section, so we're talking again about executive committee officers will be serving for 2 years, mimicking the language from that first section, Article 4, and then 2 consecutive terms plus an additional 3rd term per vote from the executive committee. That's changed from not being able to serve for more than 2 consecutive years in one officer position. And then finally, no more than half of the committee's membership shall be replaced or otherwise changed by the partnership at one time. So you'll notice really the major changes are about how long executive committee members will be serving, and how many can be changed at one time, as well as this remote participation policy. And so with, yeah, I think it might be worth any discussion, or I'll send it back to you, Ned, or leading any discussion, but other than that, those are the changes proposed.
Any questions or?
Pretty straightforward.
Great.
The issue of the makeup of the partnership is a separate issue.
Yes.
And will require additional amendments to this. once
So we're
that's
going
implemented.
to potentially adopt this issue today.
I think we had
Or
talked about
recommend.
approving these, like just saying, yes, we're comfortable with these changes, but not necessarily voting to amend the bylaws until all of the changes are incorporated. We were just working on this part first.
Yeah, so this technically is our committee assignment, we have the data committee, the communications committee, and the work. This piece was our work on the bylaws, while the strategic plan piece would be, the membership piece would be done by the consultant.
And brought together later. Okay, good.
And
So,
then,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, executive committee members don't need term limits because we already have term limits, which is being part of the RHP.
Say that again.
It says executive committee members are exempt from term limits, which is fine with me. I just was confirming that basically the term limits,
Oh, that's officers. So like chair, yeah. So I think it's,
Because members have term limits themselves, right?
yes,
So we don't, so.
Yes.
The executive committee members also have
They can serve
the 2 years.
potentially, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
I don't know if we captured, I'm trying to remember, because we changed it so the officers can serve 2 consecutive terms, that's 4 years. And then we say, plus an additional third term per vote. The first 2 would be by vote, you have to vote in your officers. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So I think we were saying, we were just trying to point out that if the executive committee has the authority to allow a third term, so I don't know if there's a cleanup on that language we could perhaps do. Officers can serve bylaws. I don't like putting things in like, hopes and desires. You know, the idea is that we have turnover in the officers, you have the same people serving for 10 years. But I don't have any suggested language in my head that cleans that up.
When you're talking about officers, you're meaning
The chair and vice chair.
right.
So we had it set up where it was one-year terms, no more than 2.
right.
We allowed Keith to go a 3rd year during the pandemic, so the bylaws was to clean up the idea. 1 year's, you really should go in 2-year chunks. 1 year is really difficult to do anything. I think we wanted to make the 3rd term, so the 3rd set of 2 years more a higher bar. But I don't know how to suggest that. It just sounds like we're not taking votes on the first 2 consecutive.
Right, I understand.
So I think maybe we take another pass at that one.
Yeah.
I can bring it up back and look at it. Just talk to that one myself. Okay. Keith, did you have any issues with the?
Whatever you agree, whatever you say and agree with, I agree. No good answers, Chairman. Whatever you say, I'm good.
We've named you a lifetime executive.
You know, man, I was walking from the car over here and I went, man, this is what I get for being here. I'm gonna get voluntold or something. No, I mean,
And named a lifetime money raiser.
you know, I was good with it when we drafted it, so.
Yeah. Cool. So again, this would come, I mean, this will kind of get put on, well, we'll clean that language up
Yeah.
like that again, but once it'll kind of sit.
Totally, yep.
And the full body would have to vote to approve anyway, so it wouldn't, like today's not there. All right, very good. Anything else on the bylaws? All right, we'll move to our strategic plan update. Ian, you're gonna take care of that one.
Sure. Well, yeah, a few things. We have our esteemed subcommittee chairs with us today, Margaret and Keith. Again, I'd like to express deep appreciation for you all agreeing to help with that. We'll get to this in a moment about the AmeriCorps Vista, but I guess I can just say that we are going to receive an AmeriCorps Vista from as arranged by the Virginia Housing Alliance in August of 2023. Very excited about that. That person will primarily be conducting strategic plan implementation activities for the regional housing partnerships. And I'd be happy to share the scope of work that we submitted to VHA. But essentially, that's going to change our timeline in terms of how frequently the committees are going to meet. And we'll have to talk about that. We can talk about that today. But primarily, I guess let's put that aside for now and talk a little bit more about, as it relates to the bylaws, the strategic planning grant that we're looking to pursue from Virginia Housing. As you may remember in November, at that point, the deadline for the grant was December 31st. That has changed. It's now May 31st, I believe, or June 30th. It's not, we had a lot more time on it, and we had to adjust slightly the way that we were procuring consultants. Long story short, we crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's that Virginia Housing wanted us to do before we submitted an application, and we should be receiving proposals from consultants by the end of the day on Friday. for a membership review that can be funded by this grant. And so we're hopefully looking to use that and put in the application as soon as possible. So maybe, middle of February. Then that changes our timeline a little bit, but once I submit the application and talk a little bit more with staff in Virginia Housing, we'll have a better idea of that timeline. Because it's a little convoluted where essentially the consultant has to do a little bit of work to create this recommendation report that we then submit into our application. And until we receive word on our application, we can't go under contract with a consultant because we need that guarantee of that reimbursement from Virginia Housing. But kind of like what Greg was getting at, that's the next step of this bylaws revision, is that look at the membership, the composition of the partnership, and other, essentially board composition recommendations. So that's where we are with that. This is sort of the internal exercise that the executive committee can do itself, but we're hopefully going to hear back about that as soon as we can, or we're working pretty hard to get it in. So that's the BHDA grant component of it. I just wanted to
Which means the exercise won't be done till this summer.
Correct, that's what we're looking, We're looking to get this all done by the June partnership meeting, I think is our goal, to start the new year.
Maybe talk a little bit about why it was delayed, I know that I'm even trying to remember all of the points myself, but for example, we had to complete a survey that they needed me to do, so I remember submitting it.
That was, I did not.
I'll take this one. I think we had a misunderstanding as an agency that work would be done once we selected a consultant. And instead, it's actually part of the required application. So we had to kind of back up a little bit, deploy that survey out, get the data that we needed, submit it to Virginia Housing, and then share Virginia Housing gives back a report, share that report with those consultants that would be putting in a proposal. So there was an additional step that we thought would be on the back end, but was required before we could apply.
And the submission was clunky, so.
Then the survey broke
It wasn't hard.
twice.
Folks had to do the survey more than once.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't received by Virginia Housing correctly.
So I mean, it's just, there've been a couple little fumbles, if you will.
But we're very confident that we have a proposal that will be accepted as the application. I mean, that doesn't seem to be really be in question.
But the bottom line is, for the next fiscal year, we will not have new members in place.
Starting in July 1, unlikely.
Right.
Pity.
And the Virginia Housing, the Tier 2 grant, and I don't say this in a critical way, it's very particular. And so we were trying to very much fit what we wanted into their particulars. And so it took also a little bit of communication with Virginia Housing on how best should we do this so that it's successful. But it wasn't as clear as most grants that we applied for, which are very clear.
So is it the right thing to do to just sit back and accept that we're not going to have any new members next year?
What would you?
By the beginning of next year, because we're not getting a third party to.
I was just gonna go there, right, so thank you for doing that. I mean, this doesn't preclude us from, so if there's the right entity, the right body, the right person, we should still proceed with that. So, right, are we thinking the same thing, everybody?
We're not hampered, nothing says we can't do. Well, one, we could change right within what's already defined. So individuals could change based on who's appointed where.
Yes.
If we had the right people in, we wanted that broader study done, which I would think we'd want done regardless if it's right away or down the road.
Oh, it should be done.
But if we have somebody that wants to join our partnership and it fits the vision and mission and goal, there's nothing that stops us from making that happen. If we come here, we'd have to do the vote if it were outside of something to allow it.
Part of the bylaws change.
So it's not that we're hamstrung or.
I just wanted to get that out there.
Well, it seems to me that there would have been an assessment of existing members. There should have been quizzing existing members to make sure they want to be members next year. Or that they perhaps had suggestions for replacing themselves with someone else in their silo. And that exercise of assessing at least the 21 roles, I think should be done before the next fiscal year starts.
Yeah.
I'm feeling not in touch with the broader board, and I don't know how active everyone else is in the board or not. Like most volunteer organizations, we've been doing this for how many years? And I'm wondering if some of the people that are named on the broader board are just along for the ride and perhaps should be invited to have the opportunity to recommit or suggest an alternative. And that would have been nicely done by a third party, but perhaps it's a staff activity or executive committee activity.
You mind if I follow up on this? So, just so I make sure I understand this, we decided who we're going to hire, right? Have we gone through that process? We're going to continue.
Keith, we need to speak up. We've got third parties on the.
Got it. You actually want me to speak louder. Most people, it's the other way.
I get that, but yell at the owl.
Yell at the owl. What is the owl ever doing? All right, thank you, sir. So, we refresh my memory, we are engaged in Sparkville too.
Not necessarily.
We have issued a
We can't
request
do
for
that.
proposals.
Yeah,
And then we have a date by which those proposals need to be received, and then those proposals will be reviewed to select winners.
And we can't hire until this month. My train of thought was is that we decided on the who, and if they want to reach just one small part of their process, that reach out and have that third party reach out without formally going into the long agreement. I know the fellows that people at Sparkman well enough to know that they probably be willing to do that as an initial, waiting for the rest of the contract. So I think there's a possibility. I believe they'll work with us. Does that make any sense at all?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, it would be inappropriate for Christine to ask all 21 people if they're interested in continuing next year, and if not, who else might they want to have replaced them?
Let me respond to that in a second. Anthony, go ahead.
Well, I guess I just wanted to confirm that there are no term limits for general members, general board members.
Well, it can vary, right? So electeds do. Like, my body just appointed me, reappointed me in January. So if somebody else wanted to serve, Diana serves because she's the transit representative. She's my appointed alternate. But it made sense because she was already attending the meeting. So you can see how that stuff works. So in an election, a different direction by the board can change your electeds on that term. So, private sector folks, if they're not, there's no annual organization meeting to say who's the private sector going to be. The consultant's going to help us go, are folks, are we missing agencies like similar to yours that aren't here? How do we maybe get more privates in? The reason I held off on the question to Christine is that's probably an Ian and a chair job, not tasked to Christine to do.
Fair enough.
So why don't we put that on our list for our next agenda setting meeting, and we'll come up with a game plan. It's timed well because we could probably do something around the coming back home, which I'm expecting we'll have good attendance at from the full partnership. And we perhaps could even do something in that day that would allow us to interview, field questions, that's a good either deadline or by that day, and it would allow us to do face-to-face check-ins with people as well. And then we could report back by the end of that, at the end of coming back home. Would that be a fair timeline?
Yeah, I think it might be a two-part conversation. One, are you willing to continue to serve next year? And if not, is there someone else in your organization or your silo, whichever the case, that you would suggest replacing you? Firstly. Secondly, who else is missing in the group? What other board members, what other organizations might we invite?
And that's what we're hoping, because the consultant, when they
Well, the
did-
consultant can do that, but if you're gonna talk to each one of them, there may be people. There may be people within our existing board
I
that
imagine
could
that-
come up with some really good ideas, or are thinking, why are these people not here and nobody's asked them? And
Well, the
here
first
we
part
are.
of the strategic plan, the first work they did, that they went out and talked to the community, even though we were in existence about 3 years at that point, there were people that are involved in the housing space still going, who's the regional housing partner?
Yes.
So part of that was, for me, part of the reason why I wanted them involved in the membership strategy, because if we still have people, and the communications committee will have to be tasked with that, who don't know that we exist after 3 or 4 years, then we have to help figure that out, and asking them to become a member is a good way to reach out and build on that. I mean, if it were Sparkman, it would be great, because they can build on top of the knowledge they already have, but we had that data, we had that info, so we can use it regardless of who the consultant is. So I think we're in agreement, obviously, on the point. It's different, I know, for each pillar, because like I said, the electeds just appoint their people, and it happens regularly. And usually, like I advocate to stay. The agency folks that are already involved, I mean, and I think this is the same for the for-profit, I don't necessarily, outside of your own personal networks, expect you to go out and knock on like other for-profit or nonprofit agencies and go, hey, come over here. I mean, it'd be great as executive committee members to do that, but we don't really have that plan or never talked about how that works before.
Right. Well, I also think kind of to the second part of Greg's question, if in these conversations we're asking, that's material that we could then provide to the consultants and make their job faster and easier.
Yeah, I'm
right?
jumpstarting the
Exactly.
process that's been delayed.
I think we could easily, with our own membership, take that task on, and the executive committee can help with that. I think we can do it. But who's missing, I think we need help.
Yeah, exactly. And my sense is that there's real value to have as many board members active in this activity as we possibly can. There's value to them to join, and there's value to us to increase. That's my working hypothesis to make the suggestion that we look for more people. And if everybody agrees with that, then I think we had the mechanism, and it's been derailed for half a year. And I'm not sure that we need to be complacent and just say, okay, let's wait half a year. So I'm just suggesting that if we're going to talk to the existing members, that we might ask them all, and it would jumpstart the formal exercise.
Well, let's put maybe, by the February executive committee, we'll have some sort of game plan in place for how we're going to get after that. Since the bylaws are out of the way, it's certainly doable.
Thank you.
Any other? And we were specifically on the strategic plan update, so I'll start with.
Yeah, I just wanted to, it's in the packet, but I can briefly go through. One of the things I was working on over the last few months was this annual report that, per y'all's, you look at it and say it looks good. It'll hopefully go out before February 1st. But basically, this report, and I'd be happy to send it out again for you all to review, but essentially it kind of goes through kind of mimics some of the presentations we give at governing boards and at the Governor's Housing Conference, for example, where it's talking primarily about what the housing partnership is, but also incorporating some of the housing programs at the PDC that have benefited from the regional housing partnership's existence. So basically, initiatives like the Virginia Eviction Reduction Pilot and the PDC Development Grant, which has basically, the RHP has made those grants a little easier to manage, and also, at least in Brooke's case, were part of our application to demonstrate regional coordination. But I won't go through this just a letter from the chair that Ned might want to read before we put it out.
It's well written.
But yeah, just
Said I was reading that, but
yeah, I mean, it's a draft. A little bit about the strategic planning process, as well as some of the outcomes milestones, and sort of next steps, what folks can expect from us in 2023. But yeah, I tried to make it look good. So take a look at it, let me know what you think. But we're excited to get something out for folks.
It would be great to send to all attendees in advance of the summit.
Oh, for sure, yeah,
Oh, that's a good idea.
that's a great idea.
I have just a quick question about the eviction prevention case management. Is that an ongoing, that was a pilot,
Yeah,
and so where does it sit now?
yeah, good question. We actually just heard back that we got our funding, well, I guess renewed and increased by $25,000 from DHCD, so yeah, very exciting. We're looking to get, thank you, a contract signed, but it'll still be with Piedmont Housing Alliance, is still our sub-grantee on that grant.
And is there information about how to contact them? Because we at FAR get, when we have the public housing evictions to,
Yeah.
which we can support, but we also are always getting contacted by people who aren't in public housing and aren't sure where to go.
I'll follow up with you.
Okay.
Yeah, and Dave Norris at the Financial Opportunity Center is the main contact for that. But I'll send you an email with more information on that.
I just want to share that.
Absolutely.
That's on, kind of like expanding on that, I'm just wondering how much of that got out into the rural areas.
It's primarily for Charlottesville, Albemarle.
Yeah, it was an urban pilot.
But we had this conversation with Dave, and there's definitely no way that they would turn someone down from, like, if you don't live in Charlottesville, Albemarle. I just don't think that they're not going around to the rural localities necessarily advertising this funding, I think is what the main distinction is. But it's definitely usable. Like, I'm not gonna say that, like, it's arbitrary, the lines of the localities we're talking about housing security, so.
And I think one of the things we can be doing is having conversations with DHCD during our check-ins that we are required to have with them. And obviously, they can't predict whether this pilot is going to become permanent funding. But if it becomes permanent funding, thinking about allowing recipients to expand their program beyond the original contract boundaries. Because we're still operating, and they're telling us to still operate as if this were a pilot, that we're testing it. But now we're on verb 3.0.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it's possible that there will be another round after that that is still considered a pilot. But we can start having those conversations with them and the recipients to say, or have you guys considered changing your boundaries for your original project?
Yeah, and I think the main reason why it's focused in Charleston, Albemarle was because that was the main aperture at the beginning when we did this planning grant, where those were the identified areas, I think that, the highest eviction rates, so it's not.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at evictions, and I don't even know what that number is, but I know that, rent relief is still a significant thing out in the boonies, and maybe this will help when you're moving toward permanent funding and kind of going out there, but I just got a little grant from Navigate Affordability, giving back to the community, and I put in that I wanted to have funds to bridge housing needs and so rent or mortgage, utility bills, similar to this. So I'm running that for this year, started in January, and I'll just be able to kind of give you the same stats that you guys have on how that money went out there.
That's great.
I think what's challenging right now is statewide, it's a very small pool of funds. I think it's 3 million for the state. So the fact that we're getting 270, we're pretty grateful for that to help them with feedback and data and showing how impactful that money can be if it were expanded. But at least staff that I've talked to at DHCD doesn't really have an indication of whether there will be support for continued funding or even expanded funding.
Right, and I figured, I felt the gap coming. I feel like it's gonna hit us harder coming up, but that's why I even went for the grant, and that's why I need them. I don't really need extra work to do, so, but, I just wanted, but in the end, that will, you got a different job. I'll just let you know what our numbers look like in the end, and then if it ends up being kind of regional and you need to prove that there's
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm wondering if there's also a benefit if we could have an eviction prevention strategy session with different entities that are dealing with evictions and working with those that are at risk of being evicted, because I think just the more that we can report on what the factors are, and some of it's financial, but there are other major, a lot of property damage related evictions going on, and I just think looking at the whole landscape, these might broaden, give us a strategy to broaden the resources that are available for prevent evictions, in terms of how to stabilize families.
Yeah, one of the required components of this grant is to maintain this VERB advisory committee. So I think in a way, I think that's a great idea for that, and I think we'll definitely, I'd love to follow up with you after this meeting to kind of think about it. We have a good amount of, it's kind of a strange word to use, but like stakeholders for this issue, but we're always looking to expand and diversify that, yeah, and I think that'd be an appropriate use of time for it. Especially as this grant is basically a year, and if we're in compliance and spending the money down, we don't have to apply it again. So we can be pretty confident that this is like 2-year cycle rather than just having to apply again.
That's new with this third round.
Yeah. Very nice. So that's the end of our work. So
Looks great.
thank you. I made it in Canva.
Canva?
Yes. That is just some of the, that's examples of some of the work that the committees have been doing. So that's examples of some of the potential dashboard designs, yeah. Canva, that's cool.
I know.
Okay, so inside of that, we got the strategic plan update, where we got this, were there, did we, anything on the committees, the 2 committees, or were we putting that here?
Well, I guess I can talk about it now, but I think primarily with the data committee, I will have more clarity on that in the coming weeks about how the timeline for those materials will be affected by this new person. So it'll probably slow it down, but continue to refine the framework and kind of what's in the packet, some ideas for this person to inherit, so they're not just starting from nothing. I think with the communications committee, we're still going to be meeting, because I think getting like a regular newsletter, this annual report, I think is under that category, as well as with the events, the big summit event, I think it's worth continuing there. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of update on the frequency of those meetings. So sorry, Mark.
That's all right. I don't mind. I like you.
Can I ask a quick question
Yeah.
about the hand dashboard?
Yeah, great. Yeah, let's talk about that. It's really cool.
Curious.
So yeah, this, so if you just look through this, these are some of the different affordable housing dashboards that exist across the country and state. We talked about it in our meeting, basically things we want to incorporate, like this one's from New York, it has district numbers, city council district numbers, so we can do it for locality within the region. But yeah, there's this hand dashboard. And actually Sunshine knows, this is an organization based in Northern Virginia, and he said he knew the people who put together this dashboard, which is really great. But essentially the gist of it is you have these are like computer generated faces or something, like they're not real people, but they don't have names, but they have occupations and then family composition, so single, married with 2 kids, whatever. And the slider starts at $500 a month for total housing costs, and as you slide it from left to right, these people's faces get covered up with the phrase housing insecure. And we were playing with it in our meeting, and it was really interesting to see, once you slid it all the way up to like 1,600, or actually it was like 2,800, I think was the maximum, of $3,000. It's like CEO and like accountant, or, there's a very, very few occupations, or at least not widespread occupations that can afford this type of housing burden. So we were thinking about doing something like this for our region, which is like, and I think a really great tool, really visually stimulating and easy way to recognize that housing insecurity is not an isolated problem, that a lot of different types of jobs produce people who are housing insecure across the spectrum. So that was just something that, this is less like a dashboard, but more like something I saw, and I know that this is something we've been thinking of, we talked about this in some of the presentations that you've been giving, but this is a great way to easily demonstrate something that might take 10 or 15 minutes to get into someone's brain. So that's what we hope really after all these tools are finished that we have some that are like, you need to kind of sit down and focus on it and you can play around with some of the inputs and variables. But then something like this, which is just a really easy way to demonstrate housing need. Oh, I'm not sharing this, I'm sorry, everyone.
Cool, thanks you.
Yes, it's very cool.
Very interesting.
What jurisdiction did you pull that down?
This is from, it's like a regional Northern Virginia
Somewhere.
organization, HAND, I forget the exact acronym.
So I'm personally super excited about this because when Ned and I do our roadshow, and you get 5 or 10 minutes, which is not enough time to talk to them, and you can slide it over, everybody kind of can now visually see that in a matter of seconds, the reality can hit in very quickly.
Do you think people see that and say this are also like personal choices that put them in that position? Like dismiss this by saying that it's really their fault, not something that.
You mean their fault that they chose this job?
Or whatever, you know, yeah.
No,
I mean, it's just like so personal that you could say, yeah, it's not, doesn't have anything to do with what I'm doing, it has to do with them.
I think it puts a face to a problem.
Yeah.
Right, and some of the local electeds don't quite understand what impact it actually has, not being able to rent something in their jurisdiction. And when you can put a face to it and find out the fellow woman or person, trying to get myself not into trouble here, person who changes their oil at their local mechanic shop actually can't afford to live in their jurisdiction, or the teacher can't afford to live in their jurisdiction, it really puts a face. I'm sorry?
The emergency medical technician.
Yeah, I mean, the list is long, but it's, I love that tool. As somebody who likes to sell for a living, man, I can sell that in 5 minutes and.
So yeah, the cool thing about that was, I mean, it's just, this feels like a common occurrence with Sunshine, but he's like, oh, I know the people that, you know, developed it. So it's cool that, you know, even some of the other resources, he was familiar with either the organization or these individuals. So we're hoping to set up, again, this person that'll be coming in August I hope to have a lot of resources for them to either replicate or start from scratch on the stuff.
We can start shortchanging the meeting, go, hey, Sunshine, you know this person.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
But yeah, those are the updates on the strategic plan. So,
yeah.
Kind of long story.
Yeah, I think there are, I remember, I'm reminded, usually the things that I remember Jesse Rutherford saying, I wouldn't repeat in another meeting. In this case, he talked about schooling basically a couple of constituents who were saying we didn't want affordable housing in Nelson County. And then he said, well, let's talk about that. And he basically qualified them, that individual that was saying that, and showed how they couldn't afford to live where he was talking about building in that where they're currently at. They're living on family property, what have you, they're not actually paying rent. But if they had to, they couldn't afford to. So it's that tool helps make that realization happen. And I've been to a few times in meetings now that when Dave and I'm always forget the gentleman's name. Matthew.
I remember his last name. Murphy.
If I don't write it down, I'll never remember it. But when they started talking $22 an hour, and how problematic that was in our area, in my brain, I wasn't thinking $22 an hour. I was stuck thinking $15, $16 an hour. Oh, like getting the minimum wage to 15 is gonna solve all these problems. Well, no, we're still $8 short. So, I sometimes think that it's easy to get stuck in whatever I'm in my 6th year on the Board of Supervisors, and sometimes my thinking of issues is stuck to when I was in my 1st year being a supervisor. And something like that can kind of update you, if you would, which is easier than trying to explain it. Like when we've done a few of these presentations now, trying to explain it doesn't have the same power. When, look, your firefighter's gonna pop insecure housing label over.
I mean, this is what we talk about all the time in Nelson because, our firefighters live in Stanton and our teachers live in Lynchburg and further away, Stanton in some cases, so they have to drive in an hour because there's no place to, you know,
Right.
there's nothing on the market, number one, much less.
And in Albemarle, we hear everybody lives in Nelson, Waynesboro.
Because the people that live in Nelson have to go to Charlottesville to get a job that they can afford.
They can afford it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
so
what
that
is.
it keeps, the ripple keeps going, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Regional housing.
Right.
There you
The
go.
one thing I'm excited about, the data part of this, is to be able to dive down into even, you know, to be as granular as we possibly can without, because, you know, if you're looking at Nelson, like you look at the poverty rates in Nelson and they're 10%, but if you look at the districts, it's wildly different. You know, Afton from Schuyler is wildly different. And so, and that really would inform like where we should be, or, you know, what kind of things we should be thinking about when we talk about zoning. And the people in Afton don't necessarily want to have something that's dense, you know what I mean, so that we can make it affordable. Actually, I would tell you, the people in the Gladstone don't really want to be there. So, you know, well, it's just a battle we'll have to fight, but at least we can explain it, you know, with both of those pieces.
Well, that's why that tool is important.
Right, no, I'm not really arguing against the tool at all. I agree that it's, and we've used that tactic ourselves when we're talking about, you know, a lot of teachers make a pretty good salary, but they can't afford Nelson. So, you know, we're always trying to get the teachers pay up so that they can afford to live where they work. So, sorry.
No, that's good. I think, and to your earlier question, like, do you think they're thinking, like, is that their own fault? I think it could easily you could fall into that trap, but now the beauty of the partnership and the TJPDC and the fact that electeds are mixing with others kind of opens them up to go, well, wait a minute, this is a shared problem.
Right.
And it's not because, okay, the personal choice for the person earning $15 an hour, well, he could make $500,000 a year and be in the same situation because of bad personal choices.
Right.
But I don't think the mindset's there because of the interaction of the different folks on the respective board. I think we're
Above that now.
above that, and I think if you're like, well, cite proof of that. Keith and I have been referring a lot to the conversation we had at the TJPDC Commission meeting, where every locality got into a rigorous conversation about affordable housing. First time Keith said he'd ever seen a conversation like that.
Yeah, about 11 years.
And those kind of conversations are starting to swirl more in each of the elected bodies. And my observation is it goes beyond whatever the politics of the jurisdiction is. It'd be real easy for Charlottesville and Albemarle, we're different politics than our other member bodies, but the conversations are the same. You know, what we might do to expend resources can maybe be driven by some political philosophy. But the problems that we're encountering are the same, and we all know we have to find solutions, and that's rising above any personal, like, how you feel about taxes or, you know, other programs that you're on. Is that a fair, Keith?
Yeah, I think we're gonna end up chatting about our roadshow, so I don't want to kind of get ahead of the schedule, the agenda on that.
I think that, well, the AmeriCorps Vista, that's,
Yeah, can I just add one detail for folks that don't know about AmeriCorps Vista? It is a full-time person that we would have working with us for a year, and it's renewable up to 3 years. There is a host site fee. It's nominal, it's very reasonable. I think it's $8,000 to have the person working with you for the year, so that, just letting you all know that that $8,000 will be something that we'll be looking to fund through this housing partnerships budget, so that we can have a full-time person with us. We're pretty excited about it.
We've had AmeriCorps before.
We have not, this is our first time.
I'm gonna point out that the AmeriCorps member will not be able to afford to live in Charlottesville. And in fact, I mean, I ran a program in Philly that had a lot of AmeriCorps, and some of them needed food banks in order to have enough food. So we should take a look at what their living allowance, it's called a living allowance, it's not a salary, and it's very modest. So it works really well for college students who are living with family, or for young people living in a group house. But other than that, it's really not working.
Yeah, we've had other planning district commissions that have utilized Vista Core members. They did say you likely won't get the same person 3 years in a row. Most people do this as like an annual service project, service opportunity, and then finds jobs that can pay their living expenses. But they've had a lot of success with folks that were Vista, then becoming staff at the Planning District Commission, or staff for agencies that work with the Planning District Commission. So that's kind of how we're seeing it, as hoping we can provide an opportunity for folks to get into this field to help support the work. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, no, it's a fascinating program. I have mixed feelings on it, but definitely take the opportunities, and I mean, it's an incredible opportunity. By design, almost, I'm pretty sure members make minimum wage. I think that's like part of the intent. Now you can have your own feelings on that, I have mine, but Taylor's absolutely right. I mean, they have opened up the ability, I think, for you to pay or provide extra stipends, so something to consider. And now they've also allowed for Vista members to have another part-time job, basically.
Yes, I did see the change to that. They were not
Which is
allowed to have another
fascinating.
position.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's, you know, it's tough for that year, but yeah.
You had Vista, didn't you?
Mm-hmm, yeah. And they ended up having a position with BRAC, and then we moved to the Haven, so. And I mean, I've had maybe about 7 Vistas since I started working. Multiple have moved on to full-time positions, not here, but in South Carolina.
Yeah, we were very pleased. There were 11 applications for 6 slots. So we were selected as one of the 6 agencies that got a Vista based on the work plan that we submitted for what they'd be working on.
Share that, because you know me, I like to copy.
Yeah.
And
We
I
like to share.
Yeah.
Anything else on that one? So we were kind of moving into some overlap conversation with so Keith and I have done 2 roadshow presentations, one to Greene County, which was a brief one. And it was more in the nature probably of their agenda and the scheduled time than anything. It went well, but it was a very much an give some overview info in a quick way, and we got 1 or 2 questions. The second one we gave just recently to the city council here in Charlottesville. That was about 40 minutes. So we were allotted 30 and we went past time. And that was more driven by questions and the conversation that was happening. We were slated to go to Fluvanna on, I forgot the date.
I think it was last Wednesday.
They had 4 public hearings that we were behind, and 2 were, I think it was 9:30, they were still on their public hearings, and we were only slated for 15 minutes. So after the city council meeting and some conversation with the chair in Fluvanna, we're working to reschedule, so we're not on a night with public hearing, but also allow for at least a 30-minute slot. Because frankly, without that kind of time, the quick up and down presentation really isn't doing a whole lot. So that's kind of where we're at. We're in the process of rescheduling for Fluvanna. We're on Albemarle's agenda for the first.
Yeah, that's correct.
We're not scheduled with Louisa yet, to my knowledge.
No, and then Nelson on the 14th, I believe.
Oh, that's right, Valentine's Day.
Louisa, we're still working, I know that, we were talking to the county administrator there, and they were looking to schedule us with their housing subcommittee before the Board of Supervisors, is what Christian was saying. So, TBD on Louisa.
Yep.
I haven't followed up with either him or Chris at the county since November.
You said going before Albemarle on February 1st?
Pretty sure.
Isn't, okay.
I think so.
Yeah, that's right. It's on the agenda.
You have all the data you need from,
Yep.
from just, you did
Right.
everything else.
Yeah, just from Nelson.
And that due date is when?
Never.
Never tell
Oh, you're great.
At 2,
Yeah, 2 on the
2
14th.
o'clock.
Yes.
But I did invite Keith takeaways from the 2 presentations, and I'll share some of mine, but.
No, you pretty much hit it, Ned. More is better. The 10-minute presentation we did in Greene County was good. I mean, but we sat there for a while. By the time it got there, the board was kind of tired, and but the way we did it in Charlottesville was absolutely the way to do it. And I think we're going to keep on pushing that agenda. Well, we'll need to look at the agendas closely, right? Because if they have a lot of public hearings and we're after it, you may want to relook at it, but, you know, it was off the charts good. A lot of great engagement from the city council members. Somewhat of a friendly group of folks, right? They all kind of get housing affordability, and they all kind of get, you know, this is urgent, and was asking the right question. Some of the other places we're going to go to, we're going to have to spend a little bit more time on educating the electeds on it, and you know, I'm sure the questions will be somewhat different that we get. So, out of curiosity, that little slide thing, it's hardly a technical term, by the way. That slide thing, any way we can get that, something like that quickly?
Like me?
Yeah.
Can't you just use that one?
I mean, it tells the story, I think, that needs to be told.
I don't understand how it's built behind the scenes, but isn't it just a slider of rents? So you could slide the rent up to wherever your locality is, and you can see everything.
But we can't amend.
I don't know, let me,
We can't.
I don't think so. I could ask, yeah, I doubt it. I mean,
You can really do a manual one where you have different slides.
Yeah.
That you're actually just cruising over.
yeah,
That would be the same thing.
Yeah.
So Anthony, the reason I don't want to do that is I don't want to provide wrong numbers.
Right.
No, I hear you.
Right, so it'll only confuse them, and so we'll come up with a
Yeah.
So the makeup of the presentation was how the partnership came into play, who is involved. So we go over the 4 pillars, talked about how it was created, then we talk about why it was created. So we kind of get through that quickly. A couple of thank yous, obviously. Then Keith focuses in, we pull and have specific data for that jurisdiction, and then jump into actual data and conversation. And by design, we're trying to get through the presentation quickly to invite the conversation and the discussion, which was successful in Charlottesville. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to ask, since I'm new to this group, what the goal is of the roundtables and what you're aspiring to make happen.
So we have electeds that come and attend the partnership. Same with TJPDC. What we don't know is what's being reported back to the boards and any perception or perhaps misconception of those bodies to us. And that's what Keith was saying, what your audience, you could encounter a different audience depending on where you're going. So part of this is not unlike what we were talking earlier about some of the not-for-profits or for-profits or people out there that don't know about us. So this is tailored specifically to elected bodies on the heels of that conversation we had at the commission meeting. It says we need to get in front of these bodies so that they know we're here as a resource for them. And we make that point in the presentation. We talk about how, look, the policies you put in your jurisdiction are yours. That's your decision. You get to figure that out. We're not here to tell you what your policies need to be. We're here to tell you that we're all dealing with this. We have sharing information and sharing solutions can be helpful, but we're here to support you in what you're trying to do in your own jurisdiction.
I would also add to that each of the local governments provides local funding to support the regional housing partnership. So going back to them and sharing, this is how your contribution is supporting the work.
So, Christine, the meeting that Ned's referring to, we've got that on tape somewhere, right?
Which means,
The one that
Commissioning.
oh yeah, they're all recorded and online.
It would be really great to Taylor, take a look at that
Yeah.
and watch it, and it'll come, the genesis of this will come very clear. It was, I mean, we ran over a substantial amount of time for that agenda item because there was such a two-way engagement and conversation, and that's when the light bulb went on, and so we need to take this on the road.
How would I access that? Maybe something can help me.
The two things that I would say after this, and in a lot of ways, using the Green County, even though it was brief, but to me, the two takeaways were it validated both our committees and the work that they're going to be doing. There is a need for the jurisdictions to have the data that our data committee will produce eventually. And the questions we received from the city council was asking for that information. So it became immediately clear, like, oh, the strategic plan and the recommendation and those two committees are onto something here. We can be that collective resource to get the regional data together, to put it out there, but then the communications committee is the one that's going to have to help us engage those who are maybe not engaged, and to get this out without waiting for roadshow to happen or for somebody to attend one of our meetings. So I was walking out of that city council meeting thinking, yeah, we're on the right track with the committee work and the strategic plan work that we're underway. And plus, it's encouraging to get the level of question that I'm always tickled when you have 2 or 3 presenters and they start looking at each other about who's going to talk first. You know, you got a good question.
Oh, yeah.
And Ian, Keith, and I did that a few times. We're like, all right, you go first.
I don't want to touch it. Wasn't that Mikey thing? Let Mikey eat it.
So sometimes maybe some of those questions because maybe like when you go to Nelson or whatever, you're not gonna get some of those questions, but you can answer them anyway. You know what I mean? So like if you get kind of like a dead audience, then you can kind of generate a little, you know what I mean? Just at least make sure that they're getting some of the content that you got out in those conversations. I don't know what my side's gonna.
The agenda placement's going to be key. When we got up in front of Green, because they had gone through a long thing, and one was
they lost
contentious, but it was a thing. It was one of those items where you don't think it's going to be an agenda, and then it's in front of you, like, oh boy, and it starts to swirl.
Yes, circuit court.
But by the time they got to us, now they didn't want to do a recess to take the time to do a recess, but then we started having restroom breaks happening while So you're never, and that has nothing to do with Green, that's not a criticism of them, but if we don't set up our agenda and ask for the important, or prioritize ourselves in the ask, then we're gonna get something. They just think, oh, we're gonna get a PowerPoint, here's some people talk at us and be done.
I think we learned a lot from those first 2 presentations on how to be a little bit better at it. And Mark and I can assure you, then now I can talk. Doesn't matter, we'll not be there. We'll not be there.
I've learned nothing, I've learned that.
We'll not be there. We'll drag Ian up and make him talk.
Well, and then again, you're gonna have Jesse, so it's more about getting him to stop talking.
Well,
you know what, I'm gonna call Jesse and say I got a client from him, he's gotta beat him at that day. So.
Oh, that's good.
in Nelson, we've got 2 very engaged supervisors.
Mhm.
But the trick is trying to get the other, how many are in Nelson? 5?
They're 5.
So getting the other 3 to engage, because and the only question we got in Green was from Dale, and Dale's on the commission. So the trick is trying to get the others to engage.
Where you are in the agenda is super important.
Well, and I also think this is the first attempt. This is getting before them, reminding them who we are, and then using that as an annual opportunity to go back and form that relationship with the board based on the work we're doing.
I got some ins.
And we're coming on Valentine's Day, Nelson, so you can big chocolate.
Are we going? Really? We've got a Valentine's Day, you and I, huh?
You remember, you agreed to dress up like you did.
Okay. You say that like I might not do that.
We've seen your show.
Yeah, you say that I might not do that. Let me see it. We can have it on that, right?
I had other notes here, I'm not sure. And we invited them to the coming back home. Some have already made their contributions. Some had already, we thank them obviously for because this is the first year they're contributing specifically to the partnership in addition to TJPDC. So I know it was like 9-something thousand for Charlottesville. I think it was 5 in Green. So
50,000 total for the 6 jurisdictions.
we were just offering our appreciation for that to each board, which is nice to do in person. But yeah, obviously the city council conversation was recorded, so if you want to see or listen into that conversation, we were first up, which obviously we got all the energy because this was the first thing they were sinking their teeth into that day. And it's right before the new city police chief was sworn in, I believe. So you get that first 30 or 40 minutes of last Tuesday.
Last Tuesday.
And if you want to listen in on I would say get past the opening presentation and get to their questions and conversation.
Don't do that. Your presentation was excellent. That's what you should have.
So I complimented Keith a lot. So you should have.
That's how I said that. You provided great information.
All right. That's the roadshow. Next, roundtable. So we'll go around and hear from everyone and see what's going on in your neck of the woods. Colette, you want to start online? If you can't, who hasn't heard of
Nothing new to report from the university. Sorry. We're still plodding along on our RFP.
Got it? I'll just go around the room. Greg, you don't want to?
Well, we're excited in the city that we might have new zoning to stimulate development for the first time in many, many years. We've had developer clients amongst other clients, and they have quite deliberately not had anything to do with the city for many years because of the delay in the update to the strategic plan and the resulting zoning. And I know of some specific sites that people are eyeing now that will be impacted with increased density, for example, by the rezoning that should see some stimulus for some development in the city, which I think is a good thing. Land is not affordable, so it's very challenging to say that that's somehow going to trickle down to affordable housing directly, although there are efforts to find some percentage of developments that are affordable, so I guess there is some component, but it's nice to have something positive in the way of growth anticipated in the city again. The county has had their act together all along, and we're watching with great interest your update to your comp plan.
Thank you.
There's an interesting headline today. The White House unveils new tenant protections against soaring rental costs. Not sure how that's going to trickle down to the states and trickle down to us, but, especially in these next 2 years. But that is an interesting headline.
Haven't seen that yet.
I heard it this morning, but I didn't get to hear anything but
I
headlines, so.
haven't got down that line either.
Nelson's in the middle of their comp plan, so, I get into that as much as I possibly can. There's it's interesting in Nelson because things have just changed from this time last year in a very positive way. So it's going to be really interesting to see how your roadshow plays out. I think the conversation has throughout the whole process so far with the comp plan that affordable housing is like a huge issue. The county just bought like 300 acres, and they're talking about what can we do, or they're saying affordable housing is going to be in the mix, but they're working on like a master plan for it. Recreation is their capstone thing there. They want to do something, fields, pools, something rec flavored, and then or affordable housing is right behind that. But we'll see. I don't, I believe it when I see it on paper anyway. So anyway, it's and my work there is just basically the same things, that I do every day. I'm just trying to do it all. So that's it. Nothing new other than that.
If a county says we have a site for affordable housing, it can happen.
No, I agree. And we've got that.
That's an encouragement that if they do designate properties.
Well, and they've agreed that, they're gonna work with NCCDF to develop it, and if it's not at that 300 acres, I'm gonna try to see if we can do something somewhere else. Because they have like a whole bunch of plans to do something with a whole bunch of money, and then interest rates and other things have kind of, a cost of building has kind of rearranged some of that. I'm not, on the closed.
Well,
The reason they don't put me in the closed meeting is because I would tell everybody.
The key is serviced land or land that can be serviced with utility. That's
Right, well, that's the.
Lots of land out in Nelson County that to get service.
Well, and there's some land in Livingston. I have some land in Piney River. This land is right around the high school, and it can be, but they're also talking about maybe putting in like a lake, or, you know, there's a lot of conversations at this point, so. We'll just have to wait and see. It's kind of exciting, you know, it's like something's actually happening in Nelson. That's not alcohol related.
Or internet. Or internet.
Oh, yeah, right.
You can't get water from your fire. Andrew?
We are still focusing on helping people living at Premier Circle find housing. And with the constrained housing market in consideration, I think has been actually very successful, which is excellent. About 25 people have been housed since the end of September, and there's another 10 who are currently living still at Premier Circle who have signed leases and just waiting to get into the units. So really amazing. And again, huge shout out to our partnerships with CRHA, County Office of Housing for their housing choice voucher programs, and also the Haven for their after housing program in Region 10. We've been able to focus a lot of rental assistance essentially for those clients, which has proven, in case there was a doubt, that rental assistance actually helps people, believe it or not, move into houses. But it is a great piece of data to really prove that if you focus rental assistance on a vulnerable population, you can have great outcomes. We are constrained still by the housing market, but some positive movement there. Other bright spots are we are currently at 8 homeless veterans in our community, down from around 15 just about a month ago. So large strides there in our efforts to end veteran homelessness. Our goal was to be at 6 homeless veterans by the end of January. And it's possible we might make it. We have a few more days, but we have veterans that are waiting to find units. And I was just talking to Keith that our biggest barrier there as well is the constrained market, but also in particular landlords willing to rent to clients that might have a criminal background, an eviction history, credit score issue. Just open up the requirements a little bit, but some really good work there as well.
But the payments are guaranteed regardless, right?
Yeah.
And that's just a conversation or
Just
story.
being able to get approved for a unit can be a large barrier on top of the constrained market. But again, some great focus there. Also exciting is we are about to get greenlit from a supporter of ours, Community Solutions, which is a technical assistance provider, to fund a position for BRAC. You're sorely in need of for 2 years for a systems improvement manager to basically focus in on the detailed day-to-day workings of coordination between homeless service providers. That's very exciting. Not been officially approved yet, but it essentially will be, which is excellent. It's actually a result. I don't know if any of you heard about the Carter grant, 100 million change or whatever, right? Community Solutions was a recipient of that $100 million to focus on ending homelessness, and this is beginning of some of the result of that 100 million. Is they're actually investing in local communities to increase capacity. So yeah, some good stuff in the works. One thing I just wanted to share real quick was also related to the evictions in the community, and an interesting angle of the affordability issue is that because there's not a lot of units available that are affordable, people are actually signing leases and getting into apartments they can't afford. And if there is a particular apartment complex, which I won't name names, but if there is a particular apartment complex that's more lenient, doesn't check about income, etc., we're seeing lots of people getting evicted because they can't pay, but they don't have any other options but to move into a place that they can't afford, and then they're getting evicted. So anyway, it's just a really interesting angle that I hadn't really thought of before, that how the lack of affordable housing also contributes to evictions, because then people end up getting into units they can't afford. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, as a veteran, thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
Sarah?
Okay, I think I want to report a little on what's happening at CRHA. We are in the process, I believe in the next month, we'll be able to move people back into Crescent Halls. And We're also moving people into new construction on South First Street, and the two together add over 100 units of housing back into CRH's inventory, which was really dramatically reduced by that construction. So I think the goal this year is to get back up to 350 units, which is kind of a cap at this point because of the way the legislation is that we can't really increase. But so those are actually coming together finally. I think the biggest barrier was actually finding developers and contractors to do the work. And I think in affordable housing and public housing, it's really a big challenge to find reputable contractors who will actually make the work a priority. And so in this last year, it seems that a lot of the work on Bethel was not prioritized in the way that we would want it to be. And so I think when we look at the overall issue of affordable housing, we have to look at where the workforce to develop it is going to come from. And then I also just wanted to mention that FAR is aggressively looking to hire an executive director. And I guess I should share, who can I share that with to get it to people's hands, the job description?
The CNE, the Center for.
Oh, you know, it's
Yeah.
posted there, but I wondered if this group also would be interested. We're trying to, I mean, we're posting it as, you know, it's posted as a job, but I think one of the things that we would like to do is have people connect with us, think about the people they know and the people they know who might be a suitable director. We only need one, and it's not necessarily going to come from Indeed, but we are interviewing candidates at this point. We have a sort of urgent timeline because I'm only interviewing people. So, wish us luck.
I know no question money, but have you looked into hiring a headhunter?
We haven't yet, but we may.
I would
Do
say,
you know what a headhunter is?
I know that Haven used a service to help hire their newest executive director.
That's a better choice of words, but.
I just got
I remember, I don't know what's the name of it. For the partnerships network, if you want to send that
Yeah,
to me, and you can share it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we are posting it, but I'm also just doing sort of my individual thing, think about who you know, who might be looking for.
Yeah, for sure.
This kind of challenge. And all the resident connections. I'll pick it up.
Christine, you want to?
I'll do two quick ones. One is just a general TJPDC update that we've hired a new transportation planner, so we are fully staffed. Wonderful thing for us. We haven't been fully staffed since I started in this role, so that's great. And with the hires that have happened, just the housing staff, I mean, I know you guys know, but the two members of our housing staff, I think, have been exceptional in the last year, so really pleased with that work. The other PDC update is that I will be bringing before the commission in April a draft FY24 budget. So I would maybe put on notice for the executive committee in February to start talking about budget that might be needed and where that revenue is going to come from, so that I can put it into the PDC draft budget.
Mr. Smith.
So to put a little bit of a verbal picture to the need, I do week-over-week analysis in the Charlottesville Area Association for Realtors footprint. So that's all the jurisdictions that encompass the commission on that end of it. And I've been taking a look at week-over-weeks for years. And so I take snapshot pictures of it. So anyway, just on Monday, last 7 days back, just to put it in perspective, we had 60 units come on the market, 87 going pending. So it's a 7-day snapshot. Same week a year ago, we had 57 come on the market and 89 going to pending. So it's not getting better, right? The lack of inventory is not getting better. The pendings are coming in. And the point I'm trying to make is the importance of the work that we do here. Maybe sometime in the middle of last year, I was thinking, interest rates, maybe inventory would pick up, sales would decrease, things might get a little bit better. And at the moment, it is not getting better, you know, from that perspective on that end of it. So I was frankly shocked when I looked at it because interest rates at that point was double where they are now, lower last year on that end of it. So I see Neil watching and to go to Greg's city comment, just to get this out there more publicly. Neil and I have a bet about my mustache, that the city will approve it by June 19th. I said over, he said under. I'm already practicing shaving my mustache, so I will gladly lose this mustache if we can get that approved. And I've had this on my face since '85.
I was gonna say, that's a big deal.
That is a huge deal for me, huge deal for me. I'm a little nervous about it,
Believe
gotta
it.
tell you.
Believe it.
Gotta tell you. Certain individuals want,
Hide for a
That mustache is more than Ian and me have.
together. I've literally had this on my face. My children have never seen me without a mustache. My wife only seen me without a mustache for a couple of months before I started growing it. So that's how badly I want this to happen. I want to lose that bet in a worse way. And then a shout out to Ned a little bit. He says this regularly. I will encourage everybody, keep a close eye on your local jurisdictions this budget season. If you want to know how we're going to get funded or taken care of, to quote Ned, watch the budget season. And I would encourage you to do that and watch it and keep a close eye on it. I think, Mr. Chairman, that's all I got, sir.
Ian, Ruth, do you guys have anything else?
No further updates.
Sure. The thing I would, in February, I don't know if it'll be the first or the second meeting in February for Albemarle, but the incentive conversation I know is coming up. I was told February.
I think it's next week.
I received a email from a apartment developer I've got to respond to and dig into that challenges my own thinking on it. And I know Neil does the same when I think about the incentive conversation versus what I've said publicly. But that incentive conversation, in my mind, has always been the biggest obstacle to getting our housing Albemarle policy in place.
That's been going on for a while, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're approaching the second year anniversary of the vote on housing Albemarle, and we're still allowing folks to come in under our policy because we delayed putting this incentive program in play.
So to go to Greg's point, that's all about this red tape and green tape.
Well, if we can get the incentive conversation, whenever that is finished, then the next conversation I expect to come down the pike will be in Albemarle, the land, the trust fund, the affordable, yeah, that's right, trust fund, we use the land. And then, you know, how would it be governed, how does that get funded, things like that. So that's the next conversation that I'm hoping happens. There's a lot of things, obviously, in housing Albemarle that are on the list that need to be done, but those two are big ones in my book. And I'm hoping, while I don't know if it'll be resolved at the next meeting, at least the attempt is to get it resolved, and this is one of the final conversations to get the incentive piece resolved. I've been encouraging people to just put some ideas on the table. What do you need to balance the project to allow for housing affordability? It was interesting is that, you know, Keith talks about the units and the availability of units. And at the city council presentation that we made, Councilor Payne made the comment about how we can't build our way out of this problem. We'll still have affordability issues, so subsidy is going to be required. And then when you need subsidy, then who's paying for that? And then where does that come from? So when I hear incentives, that's us subsidizing to try to help for that.
Well, there's two sides of that equation. I mean, if you allow more density, therefore the ROI works. So
I was going to say last Friday's, you know, Keith's show that he does Real Talk, and then there was follow-up conversation on this very topic between Keith and Jerry last week. That was interesting.
Would you correct me?
The public, well, that was a different topic. This topic about if you can build your way out, or where the subsidies are at, all of that's, I think, going to be conversation that are happening in each local jurisdiction's budgets this year. That especially will be obviously happening in Charlottesville and Albemarle. But aside from the budget conversation, we are going to be talking incentives next week. So I could be leaning on some of you that listen and that are here just to be part of that conversation, including the gentleman that reached out with a very, you know, sometimes you read emails and you get it right away. Sometimes you have to read it 5 or 6 times. So I got to go back and even dig in on it. I don't want to mention his name because I don't public meeting, but
Is it on the agenda and schedule already?
If it sounds like it, if it's already
It's
the
over,
first.
yes.
I haven't actually looked at the agenda for the first yet, is it out?
It's not out publicly, but I think Stacy shared with us that it was on the
She's
February
sort of-
one
yeah,
agenda,
yeah.
so it was a work session
I
on.
knew it was coming in February, I just didn't know if it was gonna be the first or the.
She said next
She
week,
told us first.
today.
the second.
And that's the meeting we're doing the presentation?
That's correct.
Perfect.
And the incentives are by, because we wanna move to 15%, the bonus, to get to get bonus density and things, to move it from 15% affordable units to 20. And then for rentals, move it from 80 down to 60. And then that's, how do you square the spreadsheet if you're the developer? And that's where the incentives step in to help square that math. And that's the part where getting everybody on the same page to go stamp done, so that we can start then when new applications come in, go, here are your parameters, not parameters that we thought we were moving 2 years ago. Excited to make that happen and get that behind us. Outside of that, in Albemarle, I can't think of other, I'm sure there's plenty of other things, but that's where we're currently at. Great. Well, awesome. Looks like we're gonna finish before 2:30, which is good. The only other thing I was gonna ask real fast, Dan, do you have an idea, like the donations for coming back home? Do we know where we're at from?
We raised around $32,000. So, is that what you?
Yeah, I don't, and jurisdiction wise, are we still, is
Yeah,
everybody in?
Not everybody's in, but we've had great success with many of them.
Because I know one,
Albemarle's in.
Albemarle.
I'm not gonna get blindsided
No,
like a
they're
6 month ago meeting.
very generous with contribution.
Yeah,
That extra payment you will be.
we're kind of, I think we're almost to the point where almost all of the direct costs of the event, like the space rental, the AV, the food, blah, 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 will be covered by donations, and then the allotted staff time per the RHP budget will be covered from what's already been given. That's exciting. That's kind of our target.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah. I've got 80 people sign up for the event as well.
So special thank you to Keith and Jesse. Jesse says he's outrageous, Keith, so.
I haven't really started in earnest. You know, I'm just letting you know, it's kind of like the tortoise and the hare. I'm letting me get to the finish line and that's.
I never doubt that. Mr. Smith. All right, very good. Well, thank you for that quick update again. And we're getting close, so I hope you'll encourage people to attend that day. I'm looking forward to that, to that event. Awesome. So we will adjourn. Our next meeting for the executive committee will be February 22nd, and then to follow will be the actual coming back home event, which will be our next full partnership meeting this quarter. So thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.